No one enters marriage planning to fail. No one takes vows with the intention of breaking them. No woman stands before her partner, promising a lifetime while secretly counting the days until she strays. And yet, somewhere along the way, something shifts, not all at once, not in loud, dramatic explosions, but in quiet, forgettable moments. A look that lingers too long, a message replied to too quickly, a compliment from someone who isn't her husband that feels just a little too good. This is not the story of betrayal as we've come to imagine it, fiery, reckless, and malicious. This is the story of erosion, of how the strongest foundations can crumble not by force, but by neglect, of how a woman who once built a home can suddenly feel like a stranger in it. The truth is far more complex than most are willing to admit. Because what if it's not about lust? What if it's not about weakness or bad morals or thrill-seeking? What if it's about something far more human, like the slow starvation of emotional connection, like the ache of feeling invisible in your own home, like the subtle death of being desired? You see, most affairs don't start in bedrooms. They start in conversations. Most betrayals don't begin with a kiss. They begin with silence. The silence of being unseen, unheard, unchosen. And this is where it begins. Not with scandal, not with seduction, but with something so small you'd almost miss it. Today, we're going to uncover why some married women, often the most loyal, the most loving, the most well-intentioned, end up crossing lines they once swore they never would. We'll explore the emotional hunger that no one talks about, the psychological loopholes the mind creates to ease guilt, and the quiet desperation behind every harmless message, every secret smile, every justification whispered in the dark. Because once you understand how it truly happens, not in the movies, not in fantasies, but in real, everyday life, you'll see the world a little differently. You'll see people differently. And maybe, just maybe, you'll begin to understand how the fall from grace is never one giant leap. It's 1,000 tiny steps. Let's begin. 1. The emotional void. Why married women seek external attention. They say marriages don't die from sudden impact. They die from slow neglect. Not from shouting matches or explosive arguments, but from the silence that creeps in between two people who used to talk about everything. In the beginning, marriage feels like a bond no storm could shake. There are late-night talks about dreams, inside jokes whispered under the covers, the thrill of being seen, really seen, by someone who chooses you, not just once, but every day. But then something happens. Life takes over. The passionate conversations turn into grocery lists. The lingering kisses become routine pecks on the cheek. The warmth of connection is replaced by schedules, responsibilities, and the constant hum of survival. And without anyone meaning for it to happen, two lovers become roommates. For many women, this transition is quiet but devastating. You see, women are wired emotionally, biologically for connection. It's not a flaw, it's not weakness, it's nature. In the early years, their emotional needs are often met through the novelty, the attention, the sheer presence of being in love. But as time passes, love becomes assumed. The compliments stop, the eyes stop lingering. The feeling of being chosen turns into the feeling of being expected, and that's when the void begins to grow. Not because she stopped loving her husband, not because she wants someone new, but because she misses feeling seen. Psychologists call this emotional deprivation, the slow starvation of the soul when the person closest to you stops paying attention. At first, she tries to ignore it. She tells herself, this is normal. That routine is just part of life. That passion always fades, and comfort is what truly matters. But even comfort, when it's laced with invisibility, begins to feel cold. And then one day, someone looks at her, not with familiarity, but with curiosity, not with assumption, but with attention. And suddenly, her heart beats a little faster. It's not love, it's not even desire, it's recognition, that tiny spark, a compliment, a question, a conversation that isn't about bills or chores, reminds her of the version of herself she thought had disappeared. Not the wife, not the mother, not the caretaker, but the woman, the individual. She might not even realize it yet, but in that fleeting moment, something dangerous has been reawakened, the hunger to feel alive again. This is the trap that few people see. Most think cheating, or the path toward it, begins with dissatisfaction in the relationship. But often, it begins with dissatisfaction in the self. When a woman starts to feel like a shadow in her own life, she starts searching for light. And if that light comes from outside her marriage, even just in words and smiles and energy, her mind, and more importantly, her heart, begins to drift. It doesn't mean she's immoral. It doesn't mean she's planning anything. It simply means she's human. In a world that expects women to nurture everyone but themselves, sometimes the first man who makes her feel like a woman again, rather than just a role, becomes dangerously appealing. And that appeal isn't rooted in lust. It's rooted in emotional revival. We all crave to be understood, to be wanted, to be chosen, not out of habit, but out of desire. And if she no longer feels that at home, her heart may start listening elsewhere. Not because she wants to cheat, but because she's starving for something she can't even name. And it's in that emotional void, the quiet, aching emptiness, that the first cracks begin to form. Not visible, not obvious, but real. And unless someone sees them, unless someone truly sees her, they'll only grow deeper. The justification game, how the mind rationalizes infidelity. No one thinks they'll be the one to cross the line. Not her. Not the woman who once looked her husband in the eyes and said, "I choose you forever." Not the woman who held her children and thought, "This is the life I always dreamed of." But the truth is, when hearts begin to wander, minds begin to rationalize. Because human beings can live with almost anything except guilt. And guilt, when it grows too heavy, doesn't get confronted. It gets redefined. You see, most betrayals don't begin with betrayal. They begin with a story the mind tells to make peace with the heart's unrest. At first, it's harmless. We're just talking. It's nothing serious. Everyone needs a friend. I deserve to feel good about myself. This is innocent. But innocence, when repeated in secret, slowly turns into intention. And once emotional intimacy takes root, once she starts sharing more with him than with her own husband, she is already walking a path her vows never imagined. The brain is a master at protecting itself. It can bend morality until it fits comfort. It can twist logic to align with desire. Psychologists call it cognitive dissonance, the tension between what we believe and what we do. And when that tension becomes unbearable, the mind takes one of two paths. It changes the behavior, or it changes the belief. And too often, belief is the easier one to rewrite. So the woman who once swore she'd never even flirt starts flirting because it's just words. She hides a message because he wouldn't understand. It's not what he thinks. She meets him for lunch because it's just a meal. We're adults. But what she doesn't realize, or perhaps doesn't want to, is that every justification is a permission slip. Every rationalization makes the next step easier, until the steps don't feel like steps anymore. They feel like gravity. One of the most dangerous lies people tell themselves in this stage is, "This has nothing to do with my marriage." But if it truly had nothing to do with her marriage, why does it have to be hidden? Why does her heart race when her phone lights up and her husband is nearby? Why is the truth being split between two worlds? Because deep down, a line has already been crossed, not with bodies, but with boundaries. You don't need to sleep with someone to be unfaithful. You just need to share a part of yourself you once promised to only one person, a part that was sacred, a part that now belongs to someone else, even if just for a moment. And yet, even as the cracks deepen, the mind keeps working overtime. It finds new angles. If my husband had paid more attention to me, this wouldn't be happening. I've given everything to this marriage and gotten nothing back. Maybe this is what I need to finally feel alive again. And then comes the most dangerous story of them all. I deserve this. This is no longer about excuses. It's no longer about slipping into something unintentionally. It's about entitlement. Entitlement turns guilt into righteousness. It turns a secret into a reward. It makes the heart feel like a victim and the action feel like justice. At this stage, the moral compass isn't broken. It's been reprogrammed. She no longer questions if it's right or wrong. She simply believes it's hers. And when that shift happens, when betrayal feels earned instead of shameful, there is very little left to stop what comes next. Because now, she's not just convincing herself it's okay, she's convinced. 3. The breaking point. When the line is crossed. It doesn't happen with fireworks. It doesn't come with alarms or flashing signs. The moment a woman crosses the line, it arrives quietly. So quietly, in fact, that she doesn't even realize it until she's already on the other side. One message too late, one secret too deep, one choice too far from who she used to be. Psychologists call it threshold theory, the idea that most people don't make big decisions all at once. They ease into them. They inch forward, little by little, until the unthinkable becomes familiar, acceptable, normal. The first time she texts him late at night, she feels the rush, the pulse of guilt. The first time she deletes a message, her hands tremble. The first time she lies about where she's going, her heart pounds. But the second time, it's easier. The third, easier still. Because here's the brutal truth. What we repeat, we become. The mind, once afraid, adapts. The guilt, once loud, fades. And the boundary, once clear, disappears. She tells herself she can stop any time, that she's still in control, that this is just a phase, just something to feel better before going back to normal. But the brain doesn't work that way, especially not when dopamine is involved. You see, romantic and sexual attraction don't just feel powerful, they're chemically addictive. Neuroscientists have shown that the same areas of the brain that light up during a drug high are the same ones activated during an affair. That feeling of being wanted, that thrill of the forbidden, that rush of being chosen again, it becomes a drug. And like any drug, the first taste is never enough. So she goes back, not for him, but for the way she feels around him, for the version of herself she becomes in his presence, confident, desired, alive. And now the lies get easier, the alibis get sharper, the guilt, it's no longer a weight, it's a whisper. At home, she's distant. At dinner, she smiles less. She looks at her husband and doesn't see a partner. She sees an obstacle. And slowly, heartbreakingly, her marriage becomes the affair, and the affair becomes the relationship. This is the point of no return. It doesn't matter if they've kissed yet. It doesn't matter if they've touched, because her heart is already elsewhere. And once the heart has shifted, the body is never far behind. Now, the real betrayal isn't what she's done. It's what she's become, a stranger to herself. A woman who once had lines she swore she'd never cross, now living on the other side of them. And from this place, there are only two paths left. She gets caught, and the illusion crumbles. The secrets come pouring out. The truth hits like a wrecking ball, and nothing, not love, not promises, not tears, can undo what's been done. Or she walks away, not because she's evil, not because she stopped loving, but because she no longer recognizes the life she built, because she's convinced herself that what she found, however wrong, feels more real than what she left behind. This is why the fall is so hard to stop, not because it happens fast, but because it happens slowly, so slowly that by the time she realizes she's falling, she's already hit the ground. What this really means, this isn't a story about infidelity. It's a story about being human, about how fragile we all are, how dangerously easy it is to drift from who we thought we were, and how quietly it happens when no one is looking. Because the truth is, no one is immune. Not her, not him, not you. Not the ones who pray every night, not the ones who've stayed faithful for decades, not the ones who still wear their wedding rings with pride. What makes someone vulnerable isn't weakness, it's emptiness. And when the people we love the most stop seeing us, when they stop listening, touching, noticing, something inside begins to dim, not out of spite, not out of cruelty, but out of starvation. Every person, no matter how strong or principled, has a breaking point when their emotional needs go unmet for long enough. And if that need is ignored, it will find a way to get met. Somehow, somewhere, even in places it doesn't belong. That's not an excuse, it's a warning. Because what starts as loneliness becomes longing. What starts as longing becomes distraction. And what starts as distraction becomes destruction. But here's what most people don't understand. By the time someone cheats, physically or emotionally, they've already been gone for a long time. Not from the house, but from the relationship, from the closeness, from the intimacy, from the trust. And maybe that's the most tragic part, that no one noticed the signs, that no one said, "Are you okay?" That no one fought to keep the light on when she started to fade into the background. So, what does this mean? It means if you're married, look again, look closer. See your partner not just as a mother, a father, a provider, but as a person. Someone who still wants to be wanted. Someone who still wants to be chosen. Because love is not something you say once, it's something you prove again and again. In how you listen, in how you reach for them, in how you see them, even when life gets loud. And if you're the one feeling that void, if you're already walking that dangerous edge, talking to someone you shouldn't, feeling something you haven't felt in years, then stop. Not because you're bad, not because you're broken, but because there is still time to turn around. The thrill you're chasing, it's not about him. It's about a part of you that's been silenced for too long, a part that craves connection, depth, intimacy, and maybe, just maybe, that part doesn't need to be fed with secrecy, but with honesty. Have the hard conversations. Say the things you've been holding in. Ask for what you need, even if your voice shakes. Because there is still hope for the marriage that's gone cold, if two people are willing to warm it back up together. But once you cross the line, once your heart truly belongs somewhere else, there is no easy way back. Only pain, only fallout, only regret. So before you walk any further, ask yourself, is this who I want to become? Is this what love should feel like? And is the price I'm about to pay worth the temporary feeling of being wanted? Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stay. Not because you have to, but because you choose to. Again and again, that's what real love is, and it's never too late to fight for it.